Hang on. I just need
Like
to
the four
remember.
elements.
Yeah, process. So we did the four elements and then we did the process of the elements. And now we've got the individuality that is the amalgamation, I guess, of them.
Yeah, it's this kind of yeah, it's how they're all transforming into each other, creating its own kind of, thing.
Yeah. And then we did the prop.
It let's say that launched twice on me.
No, that was me.
Yeah. Hmm.
Don't worry, I'll be back. I'll be back into it next week
That's
or
fine.
and
That's
and and try to catch up a little bit. Um I'm finishing up reading. I'm in the last like few chapters of something called Atmosphere, which just came out. It's a novel that was put out by t Taylor. Uh, who is this person?
well, I mean, I think I downloaded it.
Uh, Taylor Jenkins Reid, apparently a well-known author, The Seven Husbands of
Huh.
Someone or Other, or like I don't know. She seems to write about a great deal of different social issues across a lot of settings. And there's like a read universe or whatever. I think this is outside of that, but it's a historical fiction about the space shuttle missions in the late 70s, early 80s time frame. And the main character is gay, um, and it just follows her thing. She's got a niece that eventually she's forced to adopt, basically because her sister is a deadbeat who only cares about herself. It's very good. You guys should read. It's everybody's talking about it on Book Talk, so uh, I don't know why I brought that up, but man, I was in flying for 3 years on B-52s, so them talking about mission planning in the space shuttle and the whole thing, it's like I dipped back into a portion of my previous life that I thought I'd forgotten, and it just clicks right into place. So anyway, physics of the particular individuality we're talking about today,
Say,
and
I know how that feels because watching Twisters, the sequel in the theaters, was like that for me.
yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I loved the first one. We watched that to death.
Second one is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So,
That's good to hear. Sequels are usually terrible. I tried watching the new Beetlejuice, and the thing I hated about it the most is that they stole the major plot. Have you seen the new Beetlejuice? Okay.
not bad, but it was something to do.
Have you seen Wednesday? Okay. Well, my problem is that rather than writing an original story, they basically just folded in plot elements from Wednesday. Maybe because it was the same actress into the new Beetlejuice, and it was like I've seen this before. And uh, anyway, I hate sequels, except for Back to the Future. But that took a long time to like part two.
You
Part
changed my mind, anyways.
part three, part three, I loved from the get go, and now it's kind of reversed now. Like I don't like three as much as two now, but it used to be I hated two and I love three. So I don't know. Maybe it's all part of growing up. Anyway, I'll go ahead and read 290, and I'll just try to help anchor you guys a little bit since I haven't read yet at all, and you guys can sort of talk about some of the stuff. Does that sound good? All right, 290. Since the former elemental determinantnesses are in subjection to the individual unity. This unity is now the immanent form which, acting independently, determines matter in opposition to its gravity. As a quest for the point of unity, heaviness does not prejudice the asunderness of matter. Space, or rather a specific quantity of space, is the measure of the particularizations of the differences of heavy matter of its masses. The determinations of the physical elements are not yet in themselves a concrete being for self. Thus, they are not yet opposed to the being for self sought for by heavy matter. Now, however, through its posited individuality, posited in thought, right? Matter is in its very asunderness, or taking apartness, a centralizing of itself in opposition to its asunderness and to the latter's quest for individuality. It differentiates itself from the ideal centralizing activity of gravity and is an immanent determining of material spatiality, distinct in character and direction from the determinations due to gravity. This part of physics is individualizing mechanics, matter here being spatially determined by the immanent form. This yields at first a relation between the two, that is, between the spatial determinateness as such and the matter belonging to it. Okay, what does this mean?
Interesting, because like first it was gravity itself that was the thing determining the individuality, and now we got it in counteraction from gravity, or becoming unity in of itself, which means it has to do it in spite of or actually against gravity,
Yeah.
which starts to make this whole section make a lot more sense for you reading this. Uh, um, yeah, with this, there's liberation from gravity, yeah, but is at least indifferent to gravity.
So going on into the Zuzats, I think he clarifies it a little bit. He says, whereas the one of gravity is distinct from the other material parts, the individual points of unity as selfhood pervades the differences and is their soul. The differences are thus no longer outside their center, but this is the light they possess within themselves. The selfhood of light is thus the selfhood of matter itself. The standpoint of individuality now arrived at consists in the return of quality into itself. The one is here present in two modes, which at first stand mutually related. We have not yet reached their absolute identity, since selfhood is itself still conditioned. Here, for the first time, the asunderness and inwardness of matter appear mutually opposed. The former determined by the latter, and thus another center, another unity, is posited by the inwardness of matter. With this, there is liberation from gravity. It kind of reminds me of what Hegel talks about, the sort of reality in the upside down world at this stage, and how in reality, in the phenomenology, he talks about the upside down world somewhere in there, I think, or maybe it's in essence. I can't
Oh,
remember. The two are related, but the the fact that you
yeah.
have an appearance and then you have the exact opposite of that appearance, which is the upside down world, and the two are related, but they're not yet a total unity, and that would make sense since we're in the essence portion, physics portion. Hmm? Thank you so much. Yeah. So there you go. There's your quasi parallel.
It is in essence, yeah. I remember that part now.
Yeah.
Has to
Um,
be identity and difference as opposed to each other.
yeah. Jim,
Yeah.
go ahead and read 291 if you could.
Okay, the individualizing determination of form is at first inner self or immediate and so not yet posited as a totality. The particular moments of the form consequently attain only to an indifferent mutually external existence, and the form relation is a relationship of distinct terms. Here, body is finitely determined as conditioned by external factors and falls asunder into many particular bodies. Difference thus becomes manifest partly in the comparison of different bodies with each other, partly in a more real connection of them, a connection, however, which remains mechanical. It is in shape, gestalt, that we first have the self-subsistent manifestation of form, which needs neither comparison with other bodies nor solicitation by them.
Right. Uh, and what does he say in the remark? He says, what is true of the sphere of finite and conditioned being generally is true here in the sphere of conditioned individuality, which is a subject matter most hard to separate from the other determinations of the concrete and to hold fast by itself, especially as the finitude of its content is opposed to and contradicts the speculative unity of the notion, which alone can be the determining principle. And so we're looking at the parts as they mechanically fit together, and we know that they're part of a whole, but they're hard. It's, I guess he's saying it's difficult to determine what the unity, the notion looks like from this vantage point, from the mechanical vantage point, because, it's sort of like the body. All right. If you took out all the organs of the body for 5 minutes and tried to fit them all back together, would you make a real human with it? No, you would not. The organizing principle of the whole, of course, is lost. Um, it, if we're talking about economy, it would sort of be like being like trying to reconstruct the feudal state from materials that we find lying around today. You could do it, right? You could do it, but it wouldn't last very long because the logic of the whole would eventually subsume it and it would disappear. The same thing happened with Owen's socialist experiments in the United States and England. You could figure out how to create a town that was socialist in principle, but eventually it was reabsorbed by the surrounding economy because, you know, it wasn't big enough. It wasn't big enough to be a life of its own, I guess you could say. I could just be pulling that completely out of my ass, but that's what it said to me when he wrote this. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Cricket.
yeah.
It's okay.
I think I didn't really, yeah.
Individuality, as at first only for us, is itself only primary individuality and is therefore a conditioned, still unrealized individuality. Mere universal selfhood. It has come straight out of the non-individual and so is abstract. Also is different only in relation to what is other. It is not yet inwardly fulfilled. It's not a self-fulfilling, self-reproducing individuality yet. It's posited, but it's being posited doesn't completely complete the notion, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um,
Yep.
I mean, we might as well just jump right into it. Kyle, can you read 292 and 293?
Determinateness imposed on gravity is an abstract, simple determinateness, and so is present in it as a mere quantitative relationship, namely specific gravity. B, a specific mode of connection to the material parts, cohesion. And C, this connection of the material parts as independently existing ideality is A, they're merely ideal sublation in sound, and beta, their real sublation of cohesion heat. And so specific gravity, which is again, I guess, different than I'm used to. The simple abstract specification is a specific gravity or density of matter, a relation of the weight of its mass to the volume. In this relation, matter is itselfhood, tears itself free from its abstract relation to the central body from universal gravity, ceases to be the uniform filling of space and opposes specific inwardness to abstract asunderness, which I think at this time specific gravity had a yes had more important metaphysical distinction than it does today. Like a lot of things in science, where you have this measure where you think it's super important, really it's just a relationship of things you already have. It's so it end up so that's why specific gravity today is a relationship of densities rather than being density.
Yeah.
But think in the Zuzat, I had to read up. This was space. Oh yeah, the remark. It's like the reason densities are different is because there's these sort of pores that are filled in more with metal versus water, and so therefore that's why water is lighter, which I guess is kind of toward the truth because you reverse that, it's just that water molecules, the atoms that make it, are lighter than the metals because hydrogen and oxygen together are lighter than common metals. And so it's the fact that the protons, the nucleus fills up more space
Hmm.
because there's simply just more of them that leads to, which is the real answer, is that it just has more mass because of because of the nucleus.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny because you can see the truth in it, but the fact they went into this kind of, like you were saying, kind of bizarre world where it's because there's pores that get filled up with these heavier materials or these more dense materials. Um, yeah, so and you can see why they even came up with that with the 1 through 4 above. So
Yeah.
this part took me a bit because I was trying to understand because all I knew of specific gravity was just a ratio of one density to a kind of like a standard density, which is pretty much water these days. This is the most common one. So you can really see how it's how these things have changed to specific gravity has become pretty much more insignificant than in Hegel's time. In terms
Yeah.
of like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's see, density is at first only a simple determinantness of heavy matter, but as matter remains the essential asunderness, the determination of the form is again a specific mode of the spatial interrelation of its manifold parts. Cohesion.
Yeah.
So it's not just that it's dense, it's that it
Yeah.
coheres all that it is within itself.
Yeah. So it's like it's still separate from gravity. It's that's the force, I guess you could remember force as an appearance. At this point, it's the cohesion is the force against gravity that makes the thing itself.
Yeah.
Although, what was it? For the meteorological work, going back, thinking that according to Goethe, the atmosphere has no weight, but to be attracted and to have weight are in fact the same. Or somehow the air doesn't have the weight, yet we have the attraction down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was for me. That's a weather thing. But he did show that when, yeah, which proves gravity's fact that the air is denser at the surface than it is at top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Of hydrostatic, yeah.
Sorry. Ugh. I barely ate half my dinner, but I feel so full.
Mm.
Ugh. The medicine I'm on tells me I'm full much earlier.
Oh, yeah, Ozempic.
It's called Manjaro.
Oh,
I
same thing.
I got off the Ozempic because I plateaued and it stopped doing what it was supposed to be doing, and they said, okay, well, you need the stuff that's like industrial strength with two hormones instead of one. And I have no idea what that means, but they said, here it is, cohesion.
Trouble with insurance companies over there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hang on just a second.
All right. Cohere. Oh, okay, this is making sense going back through again. Cohesion is a sense of its resistance to decohering, essentially. And so that's why it has a mechanical response to other masses. Interesting.
Yeah. I have to keep reminding myself that in this section, the physics, it's all about the differentiation of being interacting with itself to create the complex, actual complex reality that's well, far more definitive of what nature is. Um,
Because the app before it was just sort of this abstract mass taking up space that you can might as well treat as all equal densities in your mind. Here, those density differences become important. It's
yeah,
yeah, more concrete determination.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's showing its self interaction with itself. I'm
Yeah,
saying the same thing two different ways. And that internal interaction being a complex one as opposed to one that you just sort of like stack up as a set of facts. You know what I mean? Like in science, you start with the earth, okay? And then you start as the whole system. And that is an abstract, empty abstract that you start filling up with different facts that some may be related to others, or they may not be yet. Um, it's kind of weird. Like science starts with that, and then turns around and says there's a unifying theory, we just don't know it. Whereas dialectic says you have to start from the very simple and build up to that complex whole in order to derive a a possible unifying field theory.
yeah,
Uh,
because they're just going straight down and through analysis only, and not synthesizing as well. Or in fact, that's the thing that they don't realize is that the metaphysics they're thinking about already presupposes certain things, so they think they already have it.
yeah.
But it redefines the metaphysics they've already looked at, which is the scientific revolution
Hmm.
process.
Yeah.
God, it's even thinking that uncriticized metaphysics leads to that process becoming more difficult and harder when it happens.
It seems to be mostly biologists, I think, who have been most concerned about those issues. Richard Lewontin and Richard Levins and Stephen Jay Gould. They wrote a lot about that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't,
And
I don't recall too many physicists writing about that.
Yeah. Of course, there are physicists running back to philosophy these days, but that's a new thing.
Yeah, I mean, David Bohm did write about that, but he was one of very few top physicists who actually read Hegel. He also was a great fan of Engels, but
yeah, at this point in the conversation, when we're talking to people about this stuff, it doesn't have to be any more complicated when you sing the praises of dialectical analysis than instead of finding out better facts It's more about the organizing principle of the existing facts we already can observe with the Hubble or with with the tiny, tiny microscope that looks at the quantum world, right? We have the ability to gather this information from the very large to the very small to the midland, right? It's all a matter of the organizing principle and putting it together and relating it to itself to create that whole that's going to give
Yeah.
us the sharper picture.
Analysis is one end, synthesis is the other end, and then together you get the hierarchical.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, and that's such a simple answer, and it's deceptively simple. And then they ask you, well, how far have you gone into relating it to those fields? And I'm like, I'm not a scientist, in the very large or very small, and even in the in between. Um, I'm just a philosopher who knows something about organizing the information.
We, me and I think Jen at least have that some of that science background, which
Yeah,
is would help. That's why we're helping each other here.
which is exactly what has to happen,
Yeah.
right? The I think it's somewhere in the logic, or maybe it's Hoolgate, but someone mentioned somewhere in there that that yeah, yeah, it was Hegel. Hegel said that his science of logic in the very young would appear more like a grammar, but in someone who is deeply, deeply educated in the facts of observational science, it will it will gel, it will come together, and they'll be like, yes, like this is how we get all of this stuff together. And Marx was one of those people who was able to study political economy and use that organizing principle. And there you go. He wrote Capital. And it took him decades. We don't need a singular Marx to do this work. We need teams and teams and teams of us to do this stuff in a collective sense to rocket us into the future is what needs to happen. You know, um, Marx was the precursor of what needs to appear. And I say that in this day and age, and I'm like, we're overdue. We're overdue for those teams and teams of people to get it. Anyway,
Is probably won't happen until after a revolution.
yeah,
There's nobody really among the powers that be. There's not really anybody who has a vested interest in doing that, having this kind of work done.
yeah. Now,
Right
capitalism
now, we're
itself,
living in a period where the government is retreating from this supporting basic scientific research. So we're going to be even farther away from that over the next few years, at least.
yeah. I'm at the low ebb tide where I'm like, I I'm just so pessimistic about the future. I just don't see how it's going to happen. And I know Lenin was somewhere in there as well.
Yeah, well,
Somewhere
yeah,
between 1905 and 1917, he basically said, I'm not going to live long enough to see anything." And
yeah.
of course, he was very wrong, but I don't know. So, did we say we'd stop with cohesion?
Yeah, and we'd get all the way to sounds what we did.
Okay. Well then, yeah. Um,
A lot of more of a Zuzats on this, but it's interesting though because he goes part because it is mechanical and these parts is a mechanical relationship to each other instead of just the mass bodies just sort of interacting, coherent, and attraction repulsion. There's attraction a part where they kind of merge for a second or whatever. Here, there's a kind of resistance that allows it to kind of deformation of its shape on how it reacts to these materials, and that's what we mean by the mode of resistance. And so it's a lot again. So it's the same thing as what we've talked about with that and thrust before, but much more detailed. Now that we
yeah.
have internal sense of identity. So, cohesion. In cohesion, the immanent form posits a mode of spatial juxtaposition. The material parts distinct and determined by gravity. This consequently specific mode of holding together material parts at first posited these parts as merely different, and that not withdrawn into a self-enclosed totality or shape. It is therefore manifests only in relationship between masses which are similarly different in respective cohesion. Particular individuals, and is thus shows itself a peculiar mode of resistance in the mechanical mode response to other masses. I think what time is anyways.
8:37. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got another time.
We have a little bit of time. Do we have enough time to cover cohesion?
Well, I do remember that we go through kind of the different reactions of cohesion from being like entirely brittle to just, a normal rigid response to like malleability and
Yeah.
elasticity, which that leads to elasticity with waves moving through it and stuff leads to sound. That's the overarching.
Yes. Yes.
It is interesting though, because some of this he also goes through having to deal with what the concept of metals are in his time too, which is interesting. I think the part that I didn't get was 298 as well, because it talks about the ideality. I guess it's sort of the being it's an ideal versus how it responds.
Well, ideality is an essential
Okay.
category from the logic. And he says ideality here attains the existence which the material parts as matter only sought, the independent self-subsistence point of unity in which the material parts, if really attracted, would only be negated. This point of unity, insofar as the parts are merely heavy, is in the first instance outside them, and so at first only in itself. In the demonstrated negation suffered by the parts, this ideality is now posited, but it is still conditioned, being only one of the sides of the relation, the other side of which is the persistence of the mutually external parts, so that the negation of these gives place to their reestablishment. Elasticity, therefore, is only a change in specific gravity which reinstates itself. So, so,
Because
so yeah, the physics of matter as
yeah,
an ideal uh, uh, is only one side of what is supposed to be the full notion of matter, um,
okay. So it returns
relating to itself.
back to a ideal state in a sense because it is just a state of rest. Which again, we had a state of rest early on. The other
Yeah.
thing I thought was interesting, he called back in 296 was a determinate system is calling it both as quantitative and qualitative, meaning measure, because yeah, we've already gotten there with specific gravity to determine the different kinds of response. I don't know. It's kind of funny seeing measure show back up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what was it? Punctiformity, which is brittleness, linearity, which is just general
That's
resistiveness, and superficiality, which is malleability, in terms of the different ways it can react to the mechanical interactions at a cohesive level. Mm. Oh,
I'm still trying to I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but like on one level I get it, and another I don't.
oh, you're trying to all sides it. That's
Well, yeah, you're building a situation in which the notion is complete and it has all sides. And right
yeah.
now we're examining one of the sides that is held in opposition to the other. Um,
The qualitative is its yeah, where it's specific gravity or its density, which I'd say just one specific. We'll just replace that with density entirely. Holds on to it can vary within itself how it reacts to that, and the qualitative is how it reacts to that. Because you can have different same thing with specific gravity. One is brittle, one is elastic. So makes
yeah.
sense.
And in 299, he says the ideality posited in elasticity is an alteration which is a double negating. The negating of the persistence of the material parts in their mutual externality is itself negated as the reestablishing of their asunderness and their cohesion. There is a single ideality as an alteration of the two mutually sublating determinations, the inner oscillation of the body within itself sound.
I'm
The
using
outer
not
reality of this inner oscillation seems different from the determination which we had. Its being for another is sound, which is thus the third determinant in this, after specific gravity and cohesion. Okay.
yeah, which is I guess interesting because you got the thing making changes to itself, which causes the air to move. But I swear in my mind, because elasticity, I keep thinking of the short, like the slow motion of like punching something and seeing it kind of vibrate back and forth.
Yeah.
So this is like, yeah, back to outer and inner reality. Yeah, that's the outer
Yep.
reality Dasein, not just determinants. That was also the determinant. All right. I mean, if you want to do any other parts of this, Matt,
Um,
consequently, you think ability with the simultaneous self-preservation character, yeah, because elasticity is self-preserving. Okay, and that's how we get to ideality, which is how we get to sound, which she'll explain more about sound. That is the thing, isn't it? That's the thing. Also, dialectics is the thing that self-preserves, which then still causes yet another mode of existence to that. Yeah. Okay. So dialectics is about the self-determination, which can include which includes self-preservation because it is a sublation. I don't know, just keep seeing some of the patterns here. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm really gonna have to get back into reading this to like fully grasp. But all of the parts that make up what matter is in physics are really being enumerated here. Um,
yeah, I think
yeah, and he even talks about sound in terms of its vibration,
oh yeah, this is
subdividing the string into different fractions and showing the ratios and so on and so forth. If you wanted a master class in reviewing the theory of sound during his era, he gives it to you in spades in the sound portion.
not,
Notes.
Hmm?
not but I
What was
was
that, Jim?
Well,
yeah.
I don't know if he uses the term nodes or not, but he basically has it in there in this discussion of sound.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not as long as his defensive calculus.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would, well, in a college, well, in a upper level college class, you would be using differential equations to represent vibrations.
Yep.
And
Partial. Yep. Yeah.
Hegel probably, I'm sure Hegel was familiar with, sure he was familiar enough with that math calculus.
God, wish my partial differential equation class with my PDE class wasn't crap. So
Yeah, same.
mine, yeah, my teacher was long past ready to retire.
Ah, heat. Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is one of those things, right? So in essence, you have the immediate you have the immediate
Oh yeah. So yes.
in essence you actually have four terms. So you have the immediate term, and then you have two, not one, two essential terms which are related to each other. And that was what comes after density? It's like so cohesion and sound
Yeah.
are are usually opposed to each other, I guess, within science, but they're actually very much a single unity.
Well,
Um, and considering that unity in its dialectical whole, you get heat
I was gonna say
from sound and cohesion.
in 292 though, he kind of ties together sound and heats as a third, which I don't know if that's really the way it needs to be, like you're saying. I'm just saying that's what Hegel did. The connection of the material parts as an independently existing ideality, person's ideal sense is sound, and its real sublation is heat.
Yeah.
So one is ideal and one is real.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go back through the logic and phenomenology, well, if if you go through the doctrine of essence, you notice that instead of three terms, there are four, and this is
Yeah,
confusing in the literature. Houlgate talks about this too. Like, what the hell is he doing, tacking on a fourth one to the third? And what a lot of people forget is that when you're talking about essential categories, there are two of them, not one. So you
right.
have up and down, which are related to each other. There's finite and infinity. You can name half a dozen from the doctrine of essence, and you cannot have one without the other, or it just doesn't make sense.
Because it's the inner and outer, or at that, yeah,
Exactly.
the closest part to that.
Yeah. And so, given that within the essential doctrine, heat in this case would be the real third term,
Let's
and the second and third term are really supposed to be just a self-related one. You can put it a couple different ways,
that's
but it's always the same
it's
in that
also,
case.
I was looking at metamodernism earlier. There's two different ways to describe this for whichever, like Hegel has here, it's ideal then real for the end. Like you're saying, the inner and outer for the reflect part of the reflection. Either way, they're both valid because it's still the same progress forward.
Yeah.
Just different ways of viewing it.
Yeah. And he did say at the beginning of the section that this section would be the hardest
Yeah. Well,
the hardest to do.
oh,
And
essence was also that. So because it
yet,
is,
yes, it was. But yes, it was. Exactly. But if you made it through Essence and understood what's going on, then this is going to be a cakewalk because you're actually talking about these uh, what did he call them? Uh, Natural logical categories as opposed to just straight logical categories.
yeah. I was just saying that it's as difficult here for the exact same reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So viewers at home, if you're confused about how this works, you know, um, uh, Hegel Hegel has a habit of positing in thought three three terms, which are the immediate term, and then the essential term, and then the full notional term that combines both being an essence. But when you're considering the full articulation of what essence is, you always end up with you always consider two terms. These are what Kant called the sort of irreconcilable opposites, and he had a whole bunch of them in his system, which Hegel criticized heavily. Uh, and I think Hegel recognized that Kant correctly paired them in most cases, but that the contradiction between the two was actually no contradiction at all. They were unity of opposites. And for Marxists listening, that term you should know something about that term or at least recognize it from some of your reading because it appears in any science that like Marx's or like Hegel's um, that lives up to the word dialectical. Da 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 da. And for any analytical philosophers who are listening, I'm sorry if this makes no sense to you. Uh, but all I can suggest is you go and read Hoolgate, and he will orient you into Hegel properly.
Thing is,
We,
dialectics does pop, pop up within analytical philosophy.
it does. It does.
No,
But I think they look at dialectical, I think they look at dialectic in the same, the closest they can get, I think, to rendering something dialectic is going back to Socrates and Plato and saying, well, it's just a give and take between two positions, et cetera, versus the actual material being dialectically related in thought and reality, I guess you could say. Um, I don't know. There are many books out there that will help, that try to orient you. But to be quite honest, I've never read a better guide to how dialectics works than just reading Hegel. Because instead of trying any guidebook, any guidebook could give you the generalities, but it's never going to be the actual relation of the materials. So you can read Engel's Anti-Düring, and he gives you a good skeleton, sort of abstract description of what dialectics is, and you can read um, The Dance of the Dialectic by um, Bertel Ollman and get, somewhat more of some of the meat on the flesh. But until you actually start working through the different materials, see how Marx constructs what the commodity is as a dialectical unity of material and social uh, building blocks that are usually seen as being defined one against the other uh, in analytical terms, but are actually a full unity that makes the commodity what it is. And any other example you can pull out of Hegel's logic, or even here in the philosophy of nature, you're not going to get a proper orientation. Um, you need to go through the material um, to be to be able to start using it, applying it to scientific subjects, um, and doing that kind of work. Um, it sounds daunting, and it is, I would say, but that's kind of the point, right? It's that unifying principle that we were talking about earlier that is more the point than just sort of getting to a point where you've gathered all the scientific materials and then suddenly you'll have an answer. Marx for years gathered all the scientific materials. Okay. He spent decades um, gathering materials on political economy. Just because he had it all stacked up doesn't mean that he was able to organize it yet until he started working with materials. And if you've read the Grundrisse, if you've read his earlier drafts, you know that he had trouble fitting it all together until he got the finished product. And that's what would that picture would. I think about that picture every day in trying to imagine myself researching and then writing a book about any subject in a dialectical sense because um, you know I think um, it would mirror what he did in his work. Okay, awesome. So if
Yeah.
you um one so I want to read through sound, but I'm also very intimidated by it. Do you guys want to just call it from 300 uh on through to heat,
Okay.
or or do we want to let me see how far this is. Let's just let's just read about sound for next time, and then we can have a proper discussion of the materials because I'm very interested to see what the science of sound in Hegel's day looks like and how he sort of fits it into um, his natural logical categorical system. So, um, what is it? Page 136 through 147. 136 through 147. It's really just 10 pages, 11 pages, and we'll be able to talk about a whole plethora of things. Let's do it. All right, folks. Comrades, you have a nice night, a nice week, and I'll catch you on the DMs.
That's good. Thanks, Matt.